not often that the legal term alternative dispute resolution actually makes the news, but with a bipartisan arbitration bill in Washington, D.C., recent changes to the Michigan court rules, and the backlog of civil cases caused by the pandemic, ADR, as it is called, this is really a timely topic. And here to help sort it all out is attorney Tom Sinas with Sinas, Dramis Law Firm. Thanks so much for joining us and helping us sort all this out.
You are very welcome, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's real simply, what exactly is alternative dispute resolution and how is it generally involved when it comes to the legal system?
It's a great place to start because it's something that really pervades the legal system. And in short, alternative dispute resolution, ADR as it's known, is a fancy phrase for describing trying to resolve a case outside of a trial, most commonly a jury trial, although trials can be to a judge as well. So, of course, our most common way of resolving these type of disputes, civil disputes, is to a trial. Alternative dispute resolution just refers to a general category of different ways that cases can be resolved in manners other than through a trial. And so it pervades the legal system because it exists in different types and in different circumstances and in different states and other jurisdictions. It's required in some way, shape, or form. So it's always been in the background of the legal system. But as you say, it's a bit more in the foreground right now because of some things that have happened of late.
Okay. So what is arbitration? And then why are we just now hearing about it, more specifically coming out of Washington, D.C.?
Okay. It's a great question. Arbitration is perhaps the most different of the many forms of ADR. And that is generally because arbitration usually refers to a process that is binding. The parties participate in an arbitration process, and the process can be decided by one arbitrator, maybe a panel of arbitrators. Usually there are rules governing how these proceedings take place. But the idea here is that the parties are generally required through some way, shape, or form to participate in this process, or they choose to. It's another way they can get there. But most significantly, the result of the arbitration is binding on the parties, meaning that there's no trial or other type of judicial review afterwards. You asked about Washington. What is significant in terms of what's happened in Washington is that the U.S. House and the Senate have now passed a bill that would ban mandatory arbitration in instances involving sexual assault and sexual harassment in the workplace. And this comes out of the story largely told by many people, but including Gretchen Carlson of Fox News, who did not know, as many people do not, that they have these binding mandatory arbitration clauses in their employment contracts and that they can cover things like sexual harassment. And so what this legislation seeks to do is it seeks to make that type of arbitration regarding those type of issues illegal, meaning that you cannot force people into arbitration in those scenarios. However, there will be all sorts of other areas, as there have been, where people unknowingly perhaps have agreed to arbitrate their disputes through some agreement, say with their credit card company or something else of the sort, and they will end up in arbitration. But the news out of Washington means we're going to carve out a certain type of arbitration.
Okay. So a couple more differences for you to explain for me. The difference between mediation and case evaluation, and how is case evaluation different now in 2022?
Okay, that's a great place to start because the words kind of all sound the same. They all end with ION, arbitration, case evaluation, mediation. They tend to sound the same. You mentioned mediation and case evaluation. Case evaluation is a thing that is really kind of unique to Michigan. Some other states have it. And what it is a process where a particular dispute is submitted to a group of typically three lawyers. And those lawyers are tasked with assigning what they believe to be an appropriate valuation of the case. The parties can then choose to accept or reject the decision of that panel. That's the general idea of case evaluation. Different from arbitration, you're not forced to accept it. But in Michigan, and this is where the change comes into place, for a long time in personal injury cases, like the kind of cases that I handle, case evaluation has been a mandatory process. And it's a process where whoever rejects the decision of the case evaluation panel has to improve their position at the time of trial or risk paying the other side's attorney fees. So this is a really significant thing because it creates what some people call a loser pays model. You don't have to accept the award, but if you don't, you have to improve your position or risk having to pay the other side's attorney fees. What happened in Michigan in January 1st of this year is that the Michigan Supreme Court issued a new revision to the court rules, saying that under the court rules, mandatory case evaluation is no longer required. And whoever chooses to go to case evaluation or ends up in case evaluation won't have those loser pay sanctions levied against them under the court rules. So that's the significant change on case evaluation, which brings us to mediation. You mentioned, what is mediation? Well, mediation is a voluntary process where the two sides agree most commonly on a neutral person who endeavors to bring the parties together to some type of resolution. It's not binding like arbitration, and it's oftentimes required by courts, but it's a way where people can choose to bring in someone else to sort of conduct shuttle diplomacy on a case and see if it's possible to resolve the differences using this neutral third party. And mediation is very common, and I expect it will continue to be common and may even more so in light of some of these other changes that we've talked about with regard to ADR.
Well, obviously, this is something you follow closely. So where can people go to get more information?
So they can find us online at www.sinasdramis.com. They can shoot us an email at info@sinasdramis.com or give us a call at 616-301-3333.
All right. Thanks so much for your time today, Tom.
Thank you.